All right, so welcome to part three, I guess. So in part two, we talked about putting together it's just HTML markup, and you just look it up on the various websites from the reference I gave you or from other ones. And if you want to put something in, you want to put in a table, here's, follow the instructions for that. You want to put in a quote. I mean, there's a quote, this is a quote, whatever. And I'm just going to do this locally for here, et cetera, and you can look them all up. One of the ones that I didn't talk about, which we're going to talk about today, is one of the most common items, and I'm just reformatting this, is the div, D-I-V. And so div is just any blob of multiple lines of HTML code so that you can treat it as a unit, and we'll talk about that in a little bit later. There's also something known as a span. And a span, which we're not going to talk about so much here, but just so you've seen it, a span is a blob of HTML that's kind of in a, without the new lininess of it. But we'll get rid of that for now. So anyway, what we're talking about here is styles. And style lets you make things look pretty. And so it's just the basics that we're doing here. Nothing advanced. There are like all sorts of libraries to make your styling look really nice and easy with components that can do all sorts of fancy things. And I encourage you to look at those and to play with those and to learn about those. But for now, we're just doing the basics. And it's really the style. It's something called CSS for cascading style sheets. But again, we're just doing the basics. So at the basic level, we have a markup, an HTML markup section called style. And there are ways of putting this into other files and then loading it, but we're not going to get into it here. And we can basically say we want to style certain components in a certain way. So for example, I can say I want all my bold stuff to have a background color of yellow. And now my bold stuff has a background color of yellow, which is not particularly interesting, but you can do that. And so that's the basic form. It's what's the thing you're styling. And then in brackets, you give a list of styles followed by semicolons or separated by semicolons. So you might say, I want my headers to have a color of red and to have a background color of yellow. And so now if I reload this, my header has been styled as such. And the simplest type of styling is the styling for the colors. But we could also do things, well, I'll show you a few other things as well. We can also do something like, oh, I want all of my list items. Well, let's do that. Again, let's say my list items, I want my color to be green. And I added an extra list section here. You notice they're all green. And incidentally, this is kind of how hovering works as well. I'm not going to show you this here, but the way it works is there's a way of sensing that there's a mouse over it. And if the mouse is over it, you give it a different style. But I don't want, let's say I only want my ordered list items to be green. So now my ordered list items, so you can just list the hierarchy this way, and that's going to mean, oh, my unordered list items will not be green, but these ones will be green. Well, let's see what happens if I do just list items color red. Notice these are red, but these are still overridden by being green because it's ordered list item. So you can kind of get the idea of how that works. So other things you can do with it. So again, you can differentiate them. Now you can also go further by giving specific IDs to things. So you can say the ID for this is going to be selected. I mean, and well, let's call this second, because I don't want to imply any selectionness. And if you give something an ID, you can then address it directly. You can say, if I want the thing who has the ID of second to have a color of blue. And we've explicitly set that. So if you want to uniquely identify something, you can just give its element an ID, and that's that. Now, what's more common than ID, though, is class. Because IDs are supposed to be unique. Like there's only one of them in the entire website. Class, on the other hand, we can say this could be a class of highlighted. And let's say also that this one is a class highlighted. And let's say we also want to come down here and make this div highlighted. And then we can come up to the top and we can say we want our, it's a class, so it's dot highlighted, background, color, let's still make it yellow. Background, background, background. And there you have it. Now, so that's kind of the format. If it's a tag itself, it's just the name of the tag. If it's an ID, you prepend the number sign. And if it's a class, you give it a dot. But let's say we don't want all of our highlighteds to be yellow. We want only our list item highlighted to be yellow. So then it's list item dot highlighted. And on the other hand, we might want to do something different, like divs highlighted class, background color green, which looks horribly ugly, but you can do it. I mean, let's change that. Is pink a built-in color? Yes. We can also do RGB colors and make it more explicit. So you can see that we have a fair amount of control. We can also do things like the following. We can say like, oh, I want, for my divs, I want my border style to be solid. Oh, but that looks ugly, so this is still the same within the sum brackets. Why don't we make the border width to be 0.1 EM, and that's just like some unit, small unit for this. Oh, that looks a little bit better, but why don't we say the border, let's add some padding. Padding equals, and margin. Padding and margin are involved like interior extra space and exterior extra space. And we can see we're starting to leave space there. Let's make the margin 1.2 so you can see that does that. And if we make the padding 1.2, that does that. So the padding is leaving internal space and the margin leaving external space. And then we can say, why don't we say border radius, make it a little bit of a rounded corner situation. Not going to work if I don't spell border correctly. So now we have rounded corners, and so you can see how this will start to make your website look better. But I could be like, I don't want that for, I want that for my list items. And now our list, so you can see how these start to come together, and we still have to control the width and stuff like that. Well, let's go back. Let's actually make it, let's make this for a class called boxed instead. And we can be like, well, now none of these have it, but we can specifically say, we want this to have a class highlighted, but also a class boxed. And let's say this one will have a class boxed. And let's say our first, we actually want our form probably to be boxed. And let's also make this one bigger. And notice I haven't made the class bigger yet, but I will in a minute. And let's make this one boxed as well. And we can see that only a few of these are boxed. But here what we're going to do for our form, which is bigger, we're going to come up and add another class called bigger. And for that one, we're going to say font size is 3 EMs. Whoops. Four EMs. Is that making it bigger? I may not be able to do that with the actual form. I might have to do it within the form. Yeah, that's not doing much there. So let's, oh, wait, actually, I forgot. It's a class. So I need the dot in front of it. There we go. So I can make that stand out. So there are all sorts of things. Now, again, we're just still doing this vertically, but I'm hoping that you can see that with this, we can really make things look a lot nicer. So that's it for here. Let me actually, and I'm just going to use Emacs's Magit to push this up. This is Emacs's interface to GitHub, which I just find really efficient and cool. And if we go to this as, and I forgot the link. Meanwhile, now if we go to GitHub Pages, it's published here, except it's demo1 HTML. And notice all of the styling is all there. Okay, so we're going to stop at this. There's going to be one more video where we look a little bit at more advanced styling. I'm not really going to give you much of a tutorial on that, but rather just tell you about it and point you to other tutorials. And that's specifically for the CSS grid layout and the CSS Flexbox layout, and I'll also mention a couple of libraries, but I'm mostly just going to point you to those websites. But this will allow you to make things much cooler. And also, as a just teaser, next semester in the topics course, we'll look at the programmatic side of this, of programmatically building a website, and talk a little bit about the JavaScript side as well. All right, so that's it for this one. One more to go for this week.